What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Hijack, the thriller miniseries on Apple TV Plus starring Idris Elba. I would say easily one of the surprise TV shows of the summer, probably the number one surprise at that. Quite enjoyed this. Obviously came out of nowhere for me. I think it came out of nowhere for a lot of people, but honestly a nice little W for Apple. And I'll spoil everything to follow. But yeah, I thought this was pretty good. 7 episode miniseries from George K. and Jim Field Smith. George K. should sound familiar. He of course brought Lupin to Netflix, the French detective series with Omar Sy, and you have that pedigree. Apple spends a lot of money on the shows they do make. Looks great, and of course starring Idris Elba, one of our great stars we have today. Also has a few other familiar faces, such as Archie Punjabi. And yeah, I think it's just a great example of executing on a tried and true format or premise. This is not just a thriller, but it's a thriller on an airplane. This is about a plane hijacking in modern times. And that is just, something people like. It's a very compelling, very thrilling, and when done right, it's going to entertain. And, thinking about movies like Air Force One, whatever you think of, it like being with a hijacked plane and putting yourself in the situation of the people, you're seeing on screen. That is, I think, a really just compelling premise to have about something. And of course, when you have Idris Elba as Sam Nelson, your lead, Idris, I think, obviously he's been a star for, some time now, right? Probably almost 10 years. People know him, The Wire, Luther, movies. Idris Elba's one of his best strengths is just his sheer presence, right? And in this case, he's not playing someone who's all physicality. He's playing like a thinker, a strategist. His character is literally a corporate business negotiator. And his character, Sam, has to try and figure out how he can manipulate and subvert and thwart the hijackers who have taken over his plane, and solely for his own self-interest, right? To make sure that they don't all crash and die, right? And I think that is broadly compelling, but Idris is really good at carrying this as a series. I think where this show, 7 episodes, I didn't think it ran too long. It was pretty compelling, more or less like each hour of the flight from Dubai to London, more or less is an episode, give or take. It's pretty well paced. I would say the biggest gripe, I think, it's probably the most common gripe you would have with Hijack, is that despite liking it, despite being very entertained and compelled the whole time, I'm definitely less compelled with the stuff outside of the flight, like the back on the ground. There ends up being a fair amount of subplots to Hijack. They're all connected, they're all revolving around this criminal group that is behind the hijacking, their motivations for that, and the way they succeed in pulling off this hijacking is how they basically blackmail people and threaten their families and stuff. You understand. But some of those beats are just not quite as interesting as just being up in the sky with Idris and the crew, being like in the high stakes environment up there. It's certainly high stakes on the ground. It's just not nearly as interesting or as refreshing. It doesn't feel as special. So, when we learn about Idris's son's mother, his estranged wife, that wife, or the mother of his kid, has a new boyfriend who is a police detective, and that police detective happens to also be the ex of Archie Punjabi's character at the in the English government. Like all of that, like they don't spend a lot of time on it, but like we just kind of like don't need that much detail. I don't think. There's also a lot of stuff going on with this criminal gang. They send these like professional cleaning crews, cleaning in quotes, of course, these assassination groups to keep things in check and tie up their loose ends. And like, while that's harrowing, it's not nearly as interesting. Also, I think with Hijack, there are some plot holes if you think about things. Nothing that detracts from the effectiveness of the plot or the feeling you get watching the series. But I mean, there's definitely some notes to give. Like, for example, the police detective, who's dating Idris's ex-wife, he manages to go from like the English countryside all the way to downtown London to save Idris's son in the span of one episode, span of a few minutes. Like, even with the sirens on, not the most plausible thing. There's some moments like that. I did enjoy a lot of the stuff with air traffic control and the English government in terms of how do they handle the situation? What do they do? Do they shoot down the plane? Backing it up a few episodes from the finale, you have, I believe it was the Romanian government and Air Force threatening to take down the plane. All of that's really good. Archie Punjabi, always good. The Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary, whatever the titles were in the English government, they're back and forth and going over what decisions they can and can't make. Is there a choice to make? What do you do? That's all pretty compelling. Definitely taking some shots at the English Prime Minister, obviously an unnamed Prime Minister, but not ascribing much power or agency to the role. They're basically saying, like, oh, she'll just do what we tell her to do. Like, it's pretty funny. The hijackers up in the sky were pretty interesting as villains. And watching the rest of the plane, the people being hijacked, them having to figure things out and thwart the hijackers through secret messages and signals, and just that's all pretty fun. Again, like, you put yourself in those shoes. Yeah, I think the end of episode 6 leading into episode 7, the finale, the end of episode 6, which actually has that really great twist where you realize that there's like some quote like sleeper agents up in the sky where the other hijackers didn't know that there was someone else on board that had something to do. This person, Amanda, we learn her name. Amanda kills the pilot, domes him right in the head, and then takes control of the aircraft and locks the door. And like, that's how the penultimate episode ends. Really, I think, awesome, like, twist, or like ratcheting up the energy once again. Really great. Again, spoilers. I don't know why you listen to this if you didn't know, but when you watch the plane land, and I don't think there was much doubt that they would succeed. Like, especially like early on, all these guns being pointed in Idris Elba's face. It's like, I mean, I know he's not going to die. We know that. It's okay. But like, really great plane crash, like on the strip. I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. I mean, not a whole lot more to say, I don't think. It was, I think, a really solid thriller. Partially, I think, because it was unexpected. Partially because Idris Elba's presence and star power and just kind of the grace he has as a performer really fit the role of Sam Nelson and really fit the role of carrying this series. So all of that was a great match. And yeah, I think just the hijack airplane thriller mini subgenre, just really ripe for compelling stuff. A lot of talk about, is there gonna be a Hijack season 2? I think this was definitely an unexpected hit for everyone involved. Obviously, you could do a season 2. There are some loose ends with the criminal gang. One of their leaders escaped. They seem to be a well-planned organization. And actually, I was pretty compelled by the fact that their motivations for this was to do a bear raid on Kingdom Airlines and short that airline stock. And then when this happens, the stock obviously goes in the complete gutter, and they make all this money on the short. Pretty interesting, like, motivation, right? It wasn't as simple as, let's just free our criminal leaders from prison. I like that there was a little more to it. I guess there's more on the bone with that villain if you wanted. Obviously, it'd be pretty contrived to have Idris Elba happen to be in another plane that gets hijacked. I imagine it would be a more convoluted reason that happened with this gang, and they know who Sam is. So I'd imagine it'd be pretty messed up plot to get to that point. You could pull it off, though, because, I mean, a lot of people have compared Hijack to 24, and Idris in the Kiefer Sutherland role. I suppose you could find a way to do it, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Honestly, obviously, you would have a whole new cast up in the sky. You could get some other actors, bigger name actors, up in the plane for the most part. And there was no one too famous up there, So it's possible. I'm not necessarily asking for it, but I'm not opposed if it happens either. But let me know, how did you feel about Hijack? Are you looking for a season 2? Are you more ambivalent like me? Let me know what you thought. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.